Welcome to Broke Strategy. We have all of 11 people and how many agents, Jason?
For Heart of Atlanta, we are encroaching 1,500.
Well, I would think I should have 1,501 on this call, considering this is I think a very important subject matter. And I don't know that many brokers discuss this topic of E&O, but in this environment we're in, I think it's important. So welcome everyone to Broker Strategy today. I am your broker, Deborah Blue with Keller Williams Atlanta Midtown. I think Tom did 2 weeks ago a meeting on his topic, and I thought this was an important topic for us to talk about. So before I get started, I see a lot of people off screen, so I'd love to see more people on screen if that is possible, unless you're like me where I had construction going on and I couldn't do that. Hey, Sarah. Sarah's driving. Sarah, don't crash. So anyway, so while I was here in the office, somebody was committing fraud on my credit card. So we're going to end at a hard one so that I can go to the bank and get my new card. They were having fun at Restoration Hardware. At least they had good taste. That's all I ask.
Wow.
Anyway, so, and they didn't spend much money, so we'll see what happens there. So before I get started, does anyone have a specific broker question that they want to ask or discuss before we get started with our topic?
I do. I just got off my PC group call
Okay.
and had a very interesting scenario. One of our agents whose buyer was an FHA buyer, who was supposed to close today, decided on Friday that they don't want to close. And it was a hard decision, like meaning can't talk them out of it. And the seller agreed to do all the repairs from the amendment to address concerns. So what kind of liability is that buyer looking at?
Well, I mean, I get this question all the time as a broker. All weekend, I got these type of calls of, what can we do? First of all, I want everyone to understand we cannot hold a gun to anyone's head to close, to purchase, to anything. And there comes a time where if we've done everything we're supposed to do to explain to that customer or client the risk, then the only thing they can do is sue. And I know everyone says that's always the answer. Well, we're dealing with contracts. If when you've got a mortgage, you signed a contract saying you'll make those payments. And if you don't make those payments and say, you know what, I've enjoyed living here for about 15 years. I don't think I want to pay anymore. What happens? The home is foreclosed. So it's the same thing with a contract. If the seller played their hand well, they said, okay, I'll do everything on here now. Now, what are you going to do? So the buyer either needs to close or they can be sued by that seller. Now let's flip the script. The seller then decides to sue, but also the house is now going to be held up in litigation. So you're really not supposed to put the house back on the market, but I get that call all the time. Can I put the house back on the market, or can we go on to the next offer? I'm going to let you make that choice. But technically, if you do that, and that buyer says, wakes up the next day and says, okay, I'll go through with it, and you've put it under contract with someone else, now you've got a bigger mess. So where you are right now, Jason, is, that agent you were helping, they need to have firm conversations with their client or customer to say, here's where you are.
Yep.
And I always suggest when someone calls, you know what, we're all human beings, just sit down and let everybody breathe and talk the next day and see if everyone can bring it from a 10 to a 2, as I like to say, and we talk some sense into everyone. And if not, then everyone's going to have to lawyer up. Any other questions?
The reason I asked that is I knew, because we've talked about it a lot, is I wanted that the seller needs to understand that if they do move forward, then the house is held up.
Yes. Yes.
So that litigation process is holding the property hostage until that's rectified. And What's the docket look like right now? 1.5, 2 years?
According to Seth, about 2 years.
Yeah,
So if it's worth it to you to keep your house off the market for 2 years while you go after that, $1,500 earnest money, go right ahead. But most sellers are just not going to do that. And Seth even says that when he teaches his contract class. All right, great question. One more, and then we'll get started with our subject. Nothing? All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can share my screen again. I've got like 2 screens here, so let me see if I can do this. I believe Nyala put the handout in the chat. If she hasn't, I'm sure she will, of what I'm about to show you. Can everyone see what I have in front of you here?
yes.
Okay, beautiful. So with our monthly bill, for those of you that have been with Keller Williams for a while, we have a monthly bill, and part of that bill has errors and omission insurance or fee that is charged. Technically, the brokerage every year updates this insurance just like you would update your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance, things of that nature. So this insurance is for the brokerage and all the agents that are under the operating or the qualifying broker's license office. And so what happens is every time we add a new agent, every time we grow, that insurance will be a little bit more expensive because we're covering everyone in the brokerage with their errors and omission when they have a lawsuit pending. The reason I felt like this was an interesting topic to talk about, I don't know that anyone has ever talked about it. And if you have experienced this, I would love for you to share. This is the place to do it. It's because I think we pay the bill. We don't really know, what does that mean? Am I covered? If someone sues me, what does that mean? Now, when I tell you a couple of numbers and things of that nature, I'm speaking specifically about the policy of Midtown. If you're on this call from a different Heart of Atlanta office, you'll need to check with your broker and your team leader as far as what the actual fees are for you. So why do we need errors and omission? Well, first of all, we're susceptible to lawsuits, aren't we? If we just show a house, someone wants to sue us. And we're in an environment right now where people are taking away their contingencies, they're taking away their inspections, and then they move in, they're excited that they won, like this was some kind of lottery, and they look around and go, oh my gosh, I bought the money pit. It's not my fault, it's Keller Williams or Susie Smith, or Tim Jones, it's their fault. And so the first thing they will do is call the broker, or they'll call an attorney, whichever they decide to call first, and say, I've had this call quite a bit lately, and it's quite unusual because in all my years of doing this, I've never seen so many people call to say, I'm suing you, I need your errors and omission insurance number. I've had attorneys call me, I've had clients call me, and I want you to know, as your broker, I don't give up that information very easily. I need to find out why you need that information, but I cannot stop them from asking me to file a claim. I like to quantify and qualify that information first, because I need to speak to you as the licensee, because the first thing I'm going to ask you is, do you have all your ducks in a row? And ducks in a row mean documentation, phone calls, texts, documents. Please don't just rely on the office. If you didn't put it in KW Command or .loop, or you don't have a copy of it, we don't have a copy of it. So you need to make sure. The way that I handle my documentation, every Sunday, I'm a creature of systems. Every Sunday, my phone will let me know that I need to back up my systems. And I have a little 1 terabyte drive that I can stick in my phone, and it saves everything: pictures, videos, texts, everything. So it only costs me, I don't know, 60 or 70 bucks from Target. I just put that thing in there on Sunday and it saves all of my text. I recently was contacted by Greg about a transaction I did. I forgot about it because it was from 2018. And my seller told me they were going to file a complaint against the other agent. So my favorite investigator called me and asked, hey, do you have this? Well, we only have to keep our files for 3 years, but I had my files because 3 years ago we were using .loop and I don't have access to .loop, but I had access to my files. And I was able to give her everything, including, oh, by the way, if you need my text or email conversations, I have that as well. Okay. So we're susceptible to some type of professional liability lawsuits because we handle what? We handle expensive transactions. Expensive, it doesn't matter if it's a $50,000 transaction or $50 million transaction, it's expensive to the buyer at the time. And because there's thousands of transactions that go on all the time, we are also susceptible to making some mistakes. So think of your E&O insurance as your malpractice. If you are a doctor has malpractice insurance. Anyone who's licensed by a state typically will carry some type of errors and omission. Your mortgage broker or bank carries it, we carry it, attorneys carry it because of this type of thing. So what would be the reason that E&O would be used? If you're sued, if a disgruntled buyer has buyer remorse, I described that at the top of this hour here, and they're going to say, this is the call I get quite a bit. I don't think Tom was acting in the best interests for me, and I'm pissed off and I want somebody to pay for it. That's the number one thing that I get when it falls in this category. Or your advice fails to meet the client's expectations. Now, there are a lot of people that use the word expert. I like the word consultant because you're consulting. When you start putting expert on things, that can backfire when it's time to sue you, because you are proclaiming on your business card, on your website, on however you've got that displayed, that you're an expert. I don't know too many experts, but I do know consultants. All right. So when it comes to giving client advice, and as our contracts say, advise the customer and client, we know nothing about nothing. Remember that from pre-license? You're supposed to check it out for yourself. Okay. We may give you list of vendors. We may give you our experience. And I like to always use the word, I can tell you my experience, or my experience has been, but I don't say my advice is. Okay. A client alleges you didn't tell them about water damage in the house and tries to recover the cost of mold remediation from you. I'm currently going, not me personally, but as the broker, I'm going through this lawsuit right now where the house was rehabbed, no permits were pulled, and the buyer is saying, you know, shame on the agent, they didn't tell me X, Y, and Z. So we want to sue. Okay, so these are just some quick bullet points as to different things that I've experienced as the broker and that I've heard in the industry over the years that I've been doing this. So here's some common triggers. See if any of these resonate with you. Misrepresenting of the property condition, boundaries, or size. As a broker, I've had broker calls where things are listed as such and such an acres. We all learned in pre-license, we're supposed to say plus or minus, because if you advertise on the sign, it's 5 acres, and then someone does or does not do a survey, and it happens to be 3.8 acres, now what? Non-disclosure. So many of us have sold properties as is with no disclosure. Usually it's buyer beware because that's the type of state we live in, but they may come after you because of non-disclosure, especially if you do know and they can prove that you knew. Remember what I said, prove that you know. Failure to verify information given by the seller to the buyer. So what do we mean by that? When you list a property and the seller fills out information, I'll give you an example of mine. Recently, I listed a property and we got a cash offer. It was a bogus offer, but it was a blind offer. but it said, we will pay this amount as long as we can rent the property. So I went to the seller and I said, you told me when we listed this that you don't have any restrictions. You haven't gotten back to me to verify that from the HOA. And now we have an offer that says they would like to, this is a condition. He goes, oh, yes, we can. I said, well, what's the proof? He said, oh, because we used to rent in here. Okay, well, we all know that there are homeowners that will lease their property illegally without going through the HOA. And so if you don't find out to the best of your ability and you tell that buyer who wrote the offer, oh, yes, my seller said, you'll be dragged into that lawsuit as well because of the advice that you gave or the information that you gave. Undisclosed water damage, infestation, or sewer septic issue. With this particular one, I see the problem more with septic. You'll pull up FMLS or Georgia MLS and it will say, yep, it's on public sewer. And then the homeowner closes on the home or the buyer closes on the home and they have some problems after dumping everything but their children down the drain and they find out they have a septic tank. Whose problem is that? How did you verify? And now they want to know why you didn't know. You didn't crawl into the ground to find out whether or not they have septic or not, right? Errors in the home inspection. Now, I found this one interesting and I did a little research on it because inspectors put a disclaimer on their report saying, we also know nothing about nothing. We're not a specialist in roofing. We're not a specialist in plumbing. We are just giving you a surface inspection. And then if you still have a problem with any of the findings, you will do your due diligence to bring in that specialist who will know more than I do. So if we're not suggesting that, that's what this means. If something comes up on the inspection and the buyer has a problem with it, that is your opportunity to consult them to say, well, to know that you know that you know, we probably need to extend this due diligence and have a radon inspector come in or a roofing person or whatever, so that you can show documentation that you did everything in your ability to advise or consult. We're not going to use the word advise, consult your client to their options. Violation of state real estate regulations. That's basically a good example of that would be fair housing. And that's a whole different topic, so I won't get into that. We've had fair housing classes this year, and they are active out on these streets. So hopefully you are behaving yourself as far as that's concerned. Error in zoning interpretations. You don't want to advise, especially if you work with commercial, you don't want to advise something is a certain zoning when it is not. And the best thing to do is suggest that your client check with the city or the county, have surveys, different things like that. You will consult them in that. Errors in your CMA. Now that seems like, what you talking about, Willis? CMA. You may use comps from another county or 10 miles away, and the seller agrees to that and they think they can get a certain amount and then they can't, and they find out you've used bad CMA information. Now, one of the things that our FMLS and our Georgia MLS does very well is they put disclaimers and they say, also, we know notice there's a pattern here. We know nothing about nothing. If anyone has read the bottom page of a printout, it used to say this information is deemed guaranteed but not reliable. I'm kind of paraphrasing it. They've added on to that to say you need to check and make sure with whatever inspections you need to find out if all of this information on this FMLS printout is accurate. Okay. Inaccurate appraisals could be if the appraiser forgot to do something. Appraisers also carry errors and omission. Inadvertently offering bad advice. We kind of talked about that already. I don't have to give examples of that unless someone needs it, but just be careful about the advice you're giving. If you don't know it's better for you to suggest they speak to the person who has the experience about that situation, rather than you making something up or talking about something that you really don't have the experience with. We already talked about bank mortgage errors and breach of confidentiality. Bank mortgage errors, it's one of the things that you notice when you have a closing, that we all have to sign that settlement statement, and all of our information is on there, everyone involved in the transaction. If there's some type of bank error, they have E&O insurance as well to take care of that. And then, of course, breach of confidentiality. This happens every day, all day. All you have to do is dial up FMLS and Georgia MLS, and someone is telling you this is a divorce situation. Or you talk to an agent to find out information and they tell you, I think if you came in at this, they'll do that. That's a breach of confidentiality with your brokerage agreement. And if that customer or client finds out that you told that agent or that buyer that information, yes, they could come after you with the E&O insurance. Any questions about this slide? All right, and someone had a question while we're doing that.
Yes, Deborah, if like with flood zone, I always go into the FMLS. Oh, am I okay? And should I be going further than that? I mean, I look into the public records and it'll tell me usually. Is that something I should be researching further?
Well, I don't think it's something you need to research. You can for your information. I do the same thing when I'm listing something. And if I suspect, I know there's a lake over here, like I had a recent listing I sold over in Sandy Springs off of Powers Ferry. We all know that certain parts of that area off of Londonderry and Powers Ferry, that low end where Nancy Creek is, it tends to flood. And so I always ask the seller, are you paying flood insurance? And they'll tell me no. And then you can also check with the insurance company or the lender. They can look it up, because they're gonna do their due diligence anyway and tell the buyer, oh, by the way, you're probably going to have to get flood insurance. So again, that's just consulting, saying, hey, this house possibly could be in a floodplain. We can check FEMA, FEMA.gov, and put in the address and check it. And if you are newer to the business or experienced and you don't know how to read a flood map, then you can talk to any insurance company, because they're all connected as far as their systems, by putting in the address, and they can get that information for you very quickly.
Okay,
because floodplains, you have to understand, change. Mother Nature does whatever she wants to do. So today your home could be fine, and tomorrow your home could be underwater. Just turn on the news and we see that on a daily basis. Next question. Or did I answer your question, Carla? Yes.
I think it's important, Deborah. Hey, Deborah, I think it's important. What you just said is it's important for us to do the research for our knowledge. And we give the resources to the buyers to do their research as well.
Yes. Yes. And of course, what is the favorite thing that all of our clients say to us? What do you think? Well, that's a loaded question, you guys. What do you think? And we all have egos sometimes, like, ha ha ha, I'm the realtor, I'm going to answer all their questions and be customer service oriented. But every time you take that extra step, you have to think to yourself, how do I word this? Because what's wrong with people right now? They hear what they want to hear. When you tell your child you cannot have cookies before dinner, they heard, I'm getting cookies. Okay. And they don't know when they're getting them, but they're getting cookies. You might be saying,
Deborah,
you've got to eat before you have cookies. Yes.
what about an estate? I mean, I
What about
understand
it?
what you're saying about a divorce. You're not now, wait, if you have permission from the client to disclose that they're getting divorced.
Yes,
I
you're
mean,
fine. And how would you
okay.
have permission? How would you notate that you have permission?
You need it in writing,
And where
text
would
or
you put
email,
that?
in
Where
a
would you put
file
that?
and back it up.
And where would you put it? I want you to tell me specifically, where would you put it? Where
I
would you put that
wouldn't,
information?
I don't know if I would put it anywhere, would I, unless someone asked.
Special stipulations.
Thank you.
And
Who said
and
that?
Michelle
Dawn.
Pleasant.
Thank you, Michelle. That's
So
what you
you
have a listing agreement for. So
I
when
know,
my,
but do
when
you
I,
have to disclose it if they give you permission? That's my
you
question.
don't, no. If they give you
That-
permission, you don't have to disclose it. If someone asks,
Right.
you know you have permission. So if anybody's ever co-opted with me and I have permission on things, I start off the sentence with, I have permission from my seller to tell you, and then I tell them whatever it is.
Okay,
Every single time, only because I have permission. And I've written it in special steps on the listing agreement because we sat down at the table and said, okay, here's what's going to happen. And based on the things we talked about, I'm going to write in here. And the reason I like to put it in special steps, because what do they have to do to that broker agreement?
sign it.
Sign it. So not only do I have it written, I have a signature acknowledging that what we discussed, the terms, the commission, the price, what happens if, blah, 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 and special steps, anything special. That's why it's a special step, because
Right, so
every
if they,
listing
if
agreement-
I mean, I'm just thinking about a current situation. It never occurred to me that they were getting divorced. So it did not go into special steps.
That's
in-
okay.
In the transaction she's like, yeah, we're getting divorced. I said, well, is the sale of the house, does it have to go through you know,
Do you have a divorce
lawyers
decree?
or whatever? Yeah, and she's like, no, we have an agreement to sell the house and split the proceeds. And I said, okay, so is that something you want me to disclose? And she said, yeah, I'm fine with it. So at that point, I need to just get an email, or do I need to get her to read?
Okay, so take a breath.
Okay.
You spoke to the wife and she said it was okay, correct?
Yeah, the husband is an alcoholic and is in rehab. So,
Okay. Do you
yeah,
have his
so-
permission to disclose?
yeah, no, I don't.
He sobers up
So-
and says, why are you telling everybody we're getting a divorce? I don't want anyone to know that.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I see your point. Yep.
Yeah.
And what about an estate? So is that something that you have to disclose, or, I mean, if it's been probated and so forth, but it's in one person's name? I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious about how you handle that.
You don't
Same
have
way?
to disclose things unless people ask. What I do is get permission in case I need to bring it up, because sometimes agents do ask, is this
I
a
see.
blah, blah, blah. Now I have permission. Otherwise, if I don't have permission, I just say to you as the agent, hey, Sarah, I don't have permission to give you that information. I don't have, I
okay.
would be breaching my confidentiality. I don't have permission to give you that information.
Okay, got it. Okay,
And
thank you.
I'm glad you brought up probate, because I'm seeing too many probates go into FMLS and Georgia MLS. Please stop doing that. You are putting properties in the system. If that person does, well, let me back up a little bit. I'm seeing probate properties go into MLS and FMLS, and then it's put on hold while they probate it. First of all, if you had anyone sign documents and they don't have what's called a letter of testamentary to sell any of the estate, you are in violation. And so I wanted to make an offer on a property this weekend, and I called an agent who has a 4 in front of their license number. And I said, you have this on hold. I see that it's a probate. How come we can't write an offer? Oh, I didn't know it was probate, and now we can't sell it because the person who is the administrator does not have a letter of testamentary. It should never, you can't sign documents unless you have that in this state. So for those of you that are from another state, and probate is handled differently in other states, but in Georgia, you have to have that document before you can do anything, unless your estate was handled differently. Maybe it was a trust or something like that. But when it's probated, whether it's intestate or testate, and that's my specialty, you've got to make sure these things are done properly, or your transaction that you thought was going to be in 2 weeks or 30 days will end up being 60 days because you didn't do the upfront work properly. Okay. Again, giving advice on a topic you know nothing about. Okay. And we'll talk about that as well. All right.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, I heard another question. Go ahead.
So for the example for the divorce, now that she kind of found out, would you advise for them to add on the special stipulations how the proceeds are gonna be split? Because what if that becomes an issue?
Well, let's put it like this. We're realtors. I know that they think we're psychiatrists and divorce attorneys and so on and so forth. How the proceeds are split is none of our business. When you go to a listing appointment and someone tells you that they are going through a divorce, you want to find out two things. Do you have an agreement? Which in Sarah's example, she said they did. That agreement, you want to get a copy of it to the attorney. Or you want to ask, do they have a divorce decree? Because the decree will say how those proceeds. It's none of my business. I do probate, and when I close on a probate and there's discord with the siblings, that's none of my business. I've done my job. I listed it, I marketed it, I sold it. The proceeds go into the estate to pay the debts, and then everybody gets, because all the debts have to be paid before any disbursement to heirs. And how that's dispersed is none of my business. But I will tell the attorney up front, it's a probate. This is the other thing I see that's a mistake. When you know you have pre-foreclosure, short sale, probate, divorce, all these specialty things that are not the norm in a transaction, you as the agent, and I don't care which agent, both of you should do it, should let the attorney know. Attorneys are used to just running us through their office like conveyor belts. Living room, dining room, great room, closed. Living room, dining room, great room, closed. Oh, probate, I have to do a few extra things. And so if you don't tell them up front, they are processing your file as though it's just a normal transaction. They're going to need to see a death certificate and sometimes the will and so on and so forth. So with divorce, same thing. They're going to need those things so it doesn't delay your closing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I just thought that they didn't have an agreement and the divorce started happening while the property was listed.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, when they told you, then that's the time to say, okay, let's amend our agreement, or let me make sure I tell the attorney. It really has nothing to do with the potential buyer or the potential buyer's agent at that point. That's just a little extra work for you to make sure the transaction runs smooth and that you have permission from both parties to disclose or not to disclose. But as far as their proceeds, that's really none of your business. Does that make
Okay.
sense? Can you guys see my
Yeah,
screen yet?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so
Deborah.
much.
Go ahead.
Deborah, I have a question. For those agents who don't know, who pays the deductible if the agent is sued, and how much is it?
Okay, so let's talk about, can you guys see my screen yet?
It says page 3,
It does say page 3.
common triggers for claims.
I have my screen pulled up. Did you want me to pull down and let you share yours, Deborah?
I don't know. I'll just talk about it because I don't know. I was going to show the next screen. Let me see if I can pull it up. So let me answer Michelle's question. So in Midtown, and every office may have a different policy, we all have what's called a 70-30 split. The house gets 30 and you get 70. So the reason we split that deductible, because when you win, we're not going to get 100% of the money. We're only going to get 30% of the money. So we split that bill. Now, obviously, once I have to file the claim on your behalf, I contact our attorney and they look over everything. Or if I'm served in the office, or if a demand letter comes to me. Lately, demand letters have been coming first before a suit comes, because the courts are held up and they know that. So they would rather make a demand before going to the court route, because that's going to cost more money. So the deductible is $5,000 for us, and we split that with you 70-30. Now I have another slide here. That's why I wanted to move to that. But that's only for the claim. If there are damages, then that could be, I don't know what that would be. What are the damages? Is it only the amount of the commission? Did we find out there was some criminal activity? You know, I can't really answer what the second part of the deductible would be because we don't know what, you know, what the judgment is going to be from the attorneys. So the way that the process goes, if I receive a demand letter or a complaint, I'm going to talk to all parties. I'm going to talk to the person making the claim or asking to make the claim, and then I'm going to talk to the agent. I don't say anything because I don't want anything I say to be used in any, you know, misconstrued way. So then I'm going to go to the agent and go, sorry, but you're going to need to get documents. I don't do this. You do. Documents, text, everything, and pull that together. I'm going to now file the claim, and then the claim is sent to our attorney. The attorney will get your name and phone number. He or she will have mine just in case they have to ask me anything or ask for something from our office. And then they will contact you and say, send me everything. But I try to get you prepared before that attorney contacts you. Now, they will not come back to me as the broker unless they need that, or they won't come to Rick unless they need that. They will continually talk to you, and then they will contact the person who made the claim, whether it's their attorney or them direct. And then they will determine if what has happened is an error or omission on our part and what that looks like. So it's almost like a mediation or arbitration. And then if they don't like that, yes, could it escalate to a lawsuit with attorneys and a court to make a decision? Absolutely. But typically they don't, although I will say we have had those that have escalated to court. Okay. And usually when they escalate to court, we're talking big, big dollars. We're not talking 1,500 earnest money, although we have had people call to file a claim for that. And of course, what they feel are damages. And so if you lose, and let's say it's $20,000, you're going to pay 70% of that. We're going to pay 30. That is why I feel like this is such an important topic, because everybody on a daily basis has said or done something on this list, not maliciously, just you're trying to help out. You call it customer service, but you have to have a risk management plan. And what is that risk management plan? Our risk management plan for you as agents, we keep KW Command, we keep the documents for 3 years or longer. We have a compliance broker. We have an assistant team leader, a team leader. We teach contract classes. This class that you're in right now, all however many, I don't know what it says there, but however many, we have you documented that you've been to this class in the event you're sued. So when Greg or an attorney or a judge says, have you been training your agents? Have you explained this to them? Guess what we get to say? Yes. And for the others that think, I know it all, and that's never going to happen to me, then we're going to be able to show proof that they've never signed into a class, they've never logged into a Zoom. And it's not to throw anybody under the bus, but this is the job of a brokerage. So when someone says, oh, I'm going to go to another brokerage because I don't get anything, I don't understand why I'm paying for this, I'm not paying for this. Well, I can guarantee you, if you go to a mom and pop, they're not teaching this right now. Okay. So E&O insurance is not cheap, and it goes up every year for us because we have more and more agents. And if we file claims, that also, just like with car insurance and home insurance, affects us as well. But we try to get the best price. And the beauty is we're heart of Atlanta. So we have a lot of offices and agents, so we can keep those costs down. And my job is not to just throw everybody under the bus. Oh, it's a law, so it's a law. No, I really do try to keep all of us from having to go through the trouble of paperwork and this and that. Sometimes it's a simple case of letting people rest, wake up the next day, come to their senses, and let's talk it out. And that's why we say to agents, you know what, sometimes you might have to pay $200, $500, $1,000 to make it go away, versus upending your life and your business over something silly. Okay. questions? I wish I could make my, I can't make my, there it is. So what's your, okay, can you see that? No,
We see you.
just me?
Yep.
All
Not,
right, well, you got the handout. I'm on slide, I don't even know what slide number I'm on, but anyway, the slide I'm on now is the guy walking on the tightrope. And so I'm talking about what is your risk management plan? The first thing, if I can't stress anything, treat all, in caps, clients equally, regardless of their spending ability. Now, as your broker, sometimes I get calls and people will say things, and of course, your call to me is confidential. It's between me, you, and the phone. I'm not going, oh, you know what so-and-so said. At the end of the day, I don't care if that person's spending 50,000, good luck if they can find that, or 50 million. I had a client years ago, I went on a listing appointment in Smyrna, and my presentation, I use a hardbound listing book and this and that, you know, before people were using that. And they sent me an email saying, we're going to go with you. And thank you for making us feel like our house was worth $1 million. It was like a 150 townhome. That's a compliment, because even if it was a $150 million townhome, my presentation would have been the same, maybe with a few extras because it's a higher end property, but the conversation is the same. The look is similar. You know, maybe instead of the gray book, they get the black book. You know, maybe instead of 20 photos, they're going to get 50 photos. This one's going to get a tour. This one might get a 3D, but it's still a tour. You see where I'm going with that? We treat everyone the same. When I do a presentation, everyone is treated the same, whether they're an investor, whether they're a buyer, whether they're a seller. My conversation, my consultation is still the same. Okay. Never, ever, never, ever select or hire vendors. Okay. Now, I know what's going on in your head, but I give a vendors list. There's nothing wrong with that. You give them a vendors list and they can decide who to call on that list. Now, we do have a GAR form that says hire a vendor. This is how you use that for. So say, for instance, they're out of town. This is when it happens. They're a relo. They're out of town. They need to have something done. And you volunteer and say, don't worry about it. I'll get so-and-so. And this is a true story. When I was an agent in East Cobb, and this guy was working with a relo, and he hired the pool people, the pool whatever, to come and fix what came up in the inspection to fix the pool. In his mind, it was customer service. When the buyer closed, the pool leaked. We lost that one because the agent hired the pool person.